Hi, everybody. Welcome to Queers and Soaps. I'm Tommy, and today I'm joined by Lynn.
Hey, Tommy.
How are you?
I'm good.
Today we are revisiting our General Hospital segment discussing Sonny and Brenda's relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So I will roll the credits and we'll hop right into it. So the first note that I took was Brenda brings Sonny strawberries.
Yes, she did. And she's kind
Um,
of like tantalizing him on how she's eating them, and he's kind of smiling, and the dimples are coming out.
uh-huh. Um, she offers to cook him dinner, but then like he ends up cooking her dinner.
Yes, this is something they kind of really established, and has been kind of longevity on GH. Is Sonny's a really good cook. Now Brenda doesn't know this, and she wants
Uh-huh.
to kind of surprise them and see what's in his kitchen. And I think she was surprised it wasn't a bachelor kitchen with the things that she found in there. And
Uh-huh.
he makes a great like clams and linguine and clam sauce and whatnot for her, and she loved it.
um, she says to him she never met a nut she couldn't crack.
Yeah, they're doing the dance, that's for sure.
They're so, I love them. They have great chemistry, but they're so, emotional is not even the right word. They just fly off the handle like and
Yeah,
overreact.
they're a pretty passionate and volatile couple on how they interact with one another. It's true. Yeah.
um, Brenda invites Sunny to see a band with her. And
Yes.
the more they talked about, I didn't know anything about this band, but the more that they talked about it, come to find out that Lois is in the band.
She is the manager of the band.
She's the
She
manager of the band.
is, I think it's Eddie Main, who is AKA Ned Ashton Quartermain, that's the lead in the band.
It is Ned because she slipped and called him Ned, or somebody said Ned, and I'm like, wait, did I hear that right? And
Yes.
then they were saying Eddie, Eddie, and I'm like, is Eddie Ned? Like, what's
And
happening?
again, I don't know with what we're watching from these clips that we've been viewing if she's discovered that yet, or if it's about to be discovered, or they're past getting discovered. But that did first happen when
Huh.
Lois met Ned. She met him as Eddie Main, and that's how she knew him as. And then eventually it came out that he was Ned Quartermain, and there was a lot of drama surrounding that.
Was this like his like guilty pleasure? Did he have like a secret
It's an alter
identity?
ego, yes. Like his grandfather Edward wouldn't approve, you know what I mean? So he just kind of kept that a little bit silent and distant from them.
So did he like go to
So
like
yeah,
bars and
Sonny,
like perform like behind the family's
that I
back?
don't know. I really wasn't watching during that time, so I just read about some things. We'll see. I'm sure I'll
Okay.
discover some other clips and visit that a little bit more too.
Okay. Um. Also, I know who Rena Sofer is. I didn't know that she like put on the whole Brooklyn accent for that role.
When she got hired for the role of Lois, they did ask her if she could do that, and she's like, "Oh yeah, sure." You know what I mean? She's getting it out. I'm not going to try and do what she does, but she did that. She did the acrylic nails, all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Just camp it up like she was from Brooklyn.
When I can't remember the actress's name. The one that played Molly on As the World Turns, when she played Lois, did she also have the accent?
Correct.
Okay, cool.
She did. She did. Yes.
That's cool. I like that
Yeah.
consistency.
Yes.
I didn't know if it was like the longer she was on the show, she kind of lost her Brooklyn accent, like Fallon lost her Southern twang as Knots Landing went on.
Yeah. And I can't remember. That could have happened. I just don't have a strong memory of it. But I do remember her thickening up the tone with how she did the delivery versus how she played Molly on As the World Turns.
So Sonny agrees to go see this band with her, even though it's not really. He'd rather stay in and be romantic.
And Brenda's kind of honest. She wants Sonny on her arm. She kind of wants to show him off. So this is like a little debut of them as a couple amongst places that they might frequent.
Yeah. She says she wants him to meet her friends, and she says she wants to show him off. She says she likes the way she looks on his arm.
Right. Exactly.
Because he's like, is this about getting a rise out of people? She's like, maybe in the beginning it was, but now it's not.
Yeah, exactly.
So Brenda introduces Sonny to Lois, and it turns out that they know each other because they grew up together in Bensonhurst.
Which surprises Brenda that the two have the connection, and right away Lois is giving Sonny a hug and a kiss, and yeah, their old
So now,
neighborhood, if you
so
will.
now, because I can't just watch something and enjoy it, my brain has to go like million miles a minute. I'm like, well, does she know? Does she know Olivia? And does she know Kate Howard? And I'm like, I'm like thinking of all these characters that
Yeah.
Sunny has a past with.
And we're a little bit before those characters aren't even discussed until a decade and a half later. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and doesn't he also have a past with like Claudia Zakar or no? Is that not
No, he doesn't. He
okay?
doesn't.
Okay, then never mind. But yeah, I was just thinking
Yep.
about the other women in the future that are supposed to be from his past. Um,
Mm-hmm.
um, where am I? Oh, they talk very vaguely, like they're kind of flirty, but they're also talking mob stuff.
Yeah, she's
Um,
making comments about Damian Smith,
Frank Smith.
who I think is Frank Smith's son,
Hmm.
who's tied to the mob. So Brenda's fishing. Sonny doesn't care for the innuendo, you know what I mean? And he doesn't care to discuss that side of his business. So he turns a little cold on her because of that for a little bit.
Yeah,
And so she has to backpedal a little bit her way out of it, which she's good at flirting and stuff like that too.
yeah. He tries to keep it very surface level when it comes to that, and the more she digs, he's just like
Right.
no.
You know,
um,
she even says, money can't buy love. And then he says, well, diamonds are a girl's best friend, which was a little foreshadowing to some of the stuff we watch. And then he even says, money and power is what turns him on. So he's kind of honest with her about that
mhm.
as well, too.
um, they vaguely reference Frank Smith possibly ordering Sonny to take Tony Jones out.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting. I don't know what the reasoning was or what was going on in the storyline at that time, but yeah, he kind of, Brenda's a little worried and nervous, not only for Tony, but like, who is this man I'm getting involved with? How dangerous is he? And Sonny tries to calm her concerns about that, like he's not going to do anything.
So I'm assuming that this place is the Outback that they keep talking about. Oh, we're going to the
This is
Outback.
the Outback that was owned by Max Scorpio, so that's why it's called the Outback because Max originally from Australia.
Oh, really?
He's got the Australian accent. It's a little thicker in the 90s, but it's really kind of pretty much almost gone now today. You don't really hear it. So Max
Hmm.
Scorpio and Robert Scorpio, if you know from Robert and Anna and stuff back in
Yeah.
the 80s, Robin is, I'm sorry, Robert is Robin's dad.
Hmm.
So Mac is Robin's uncle. So the two are brothers,
Yeah, that I
Max
knew. I was
Scorpio
watching
and
some
Robert
80s
Scorpio.
stuff and I didn't
Yep.
notice the Australian accent. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. They're brothers and one has an Australian accent, the other one doesn't. But
Yeah, he like can
oh,
dial it down for whatever reason.
I didn't know that. Oh, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know how much I love Australia. um, so Lila Quartermain and Edward are there. Edward, that's the grandfather, right?
It is. Lila and
They're
Edward
back.
are there, and Sonny says, "Oh, we need a little more adventure," and he wants to leave with Brenda.
Hmm.
And Lila and Brenda have a little conversation,
Yeah, which was a little
and
surprising to me
Lila's
because I
not.
thought Lila liked Sunny.
Well, you're right. We saw that. Obviously, something must have happened. Um, perhaps some of the stuff came out about Frank Smith escaping and it alluded to maybe Sonny was involved and people started talking about Sonny and bad mouthing, right away from the get-go. Ned was not a fan. So
Hmm.
Ned probably wasn't championing Sonny either.
Hmm.
And I think Lila's just protective of Brenda. She almost thinks of her as one of her children. And she's, staying in her home. So she's worried that Brenda's hanging out with the wrong people now, perhaps. You know what I mean? And giving him too much attention. She kind of like, she doesn't forbid Brenda to see him, but she kind of forces her to kind of make a choice. And that kind of really puts Brenda on the spot.
Yeah,
And Sonny doesn't take that too well.
she says that he could drive her home. She's like, and if you do that, then I'll know that you respect me, and if you don't, then I'll know that you don't respect my opinion. Um,
Yeah, right.
and I like how in the car, Sonny's like, "Are you mad at me? Did something happen?" And she's like, "No." And he's like, "They don't want you around me." And she was like, he says to her, he'll take her home, but he'll take the scenic route. So he's like taking the roundabout way.
Right. Yes. And then she even kind of says, well, next time we go out, they just don't have to know about it. And he surprisingly says, well, I'm okay with that. So basically, they're going to be kind of sneaking around, not letting the Quartermaines know that they're still seeing one another.
Yeah. Brenda sets up a double date with Robin and Stone and her and Sonny.
Yes. So Robin's crushing on Stone big time, and I think he kissed her. So now Brenda wants to spend time with Sonny, but not necessarily be alone. So she arranges it so Sonny's going to cook dinner for the four of them. They'll double date together.
Mm-hmm.
But meanwhile, Stone and Sonny have a conversation, and Sonny's going to be like, after we're done with dinner, you're going to have to run an errand that you forgot to do for me and take Robin and get out of here so I can be alone with Brenda.
So Robin looks like a legitimate teenager, and Brenda looks like she could be college age. How are they friends? Like, how are they connected?
She calls her little sister, so Robin is younger than Brenda. I'm trying to remember the connection that made Brenda and Robin be so close, and I think once upon a time, Robin had a crush on Jason Quartermaine, but he didn't have the hots for her. He had the hots for Karen, and meanwhile, Brenda was dating Jagger, but Jagger had kind of an eye for Karen too. And I think that Brenda and Robin bonded because of that, because this circle of friends that were all hanging out together. Brenda kind of looked at Robin like a little sister, just like she's a little sister underneath Julia. I think she kind of wanted that little bird to take care of, if you will.
Gotcha. I liked how Brenda took control of lying to Mac to get Robin to go to Sonny's. Like, she did all the talking, and she did it so nonchalantly. Yeah. Meanwhile, Robin's like,
yes.
Yeah, what she said.
It was funny. It was funny.
She's like, I don't know how to lie to Mac. I don't know if I can.
Yep, exactly.
I liked when they went over to Sonny's, how they all had wine and Robin had soda, and then when Stone got up to check on something, she kept like sneaking sips.
She's like gulping the wine, and like Sonny and Brenda are talking so much that they're not noticing that this underage kid is drinking wine.
Yeah, he's like talking about his prom date and how she broke his heart and whatever. Yes. So she's like,
and I think we didn't see it in the scenes that we watched, but what ended up happening. Then you're right. Then all of a sudden, Stone's like, "Aha! I forgot to pick up a package from the post office. Robin, come with me." And all of a sudden, poof, they're gone and out of there. But Robin had gulped down so much wine that I think she got sick in the car, and Stone ended up taking her home. And Mac was really ticked off at Stone that Robin had been drinking that night, let alone he didn't know Robin and Stone were out on a date. So right away, you didn't see this, but this set up Mac being protective uncle / Robin's step-in dad, and he is really protective of her, and he doesn't like Stone for that reason.
I had a feeling that there was something more to that. I didn't know if there was going to be like an accident because Stone was drinking too. Like, I didn't know. But just the way they were,
I think it's just that Robin got sick.
I was like, this is more than just like a comedic moment. Like something else.
So, there was disappointment. There was disappointment on Mac's side because Robin lied about what they were doing and that she was seeing Stone, let alone she was drinking. So trust was a little bit broken, and that was unsettling to Robin too, because she thinks a lot of her Uncle Mac.
Yeah. So Sonny ends up taking Brenda to a private restaurant that doesn't have a name.
Yes, it doesn't have a name. It's so private.
And if you don't know where it is, you don't belong there.
Right?
That's what he says.
I know. It's funny.
So this is the time that Sonny gets angry and defensive when Brenda kind of jokes around about the mob and like certain people across the room, and she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, these are your friends." Like, and he's like, "I wouldn't say they're my friends, but business associates."
Well, and he kind of looks at her too, and he says, he looks at her too, and he's like, "This is all a game, isn't it?" So he gets really kind of cold to her too. So it's so funny how they both run so hot and cold. I mean, they are the star-crossed lovers where they're passionate fighting all the time. It's like one's ticked off at the other. It's like either Brenda's mad at him and giving it to him, or he's mad at her and giving it to her, and the other one's apologizing and like, no, 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 no.
He's very much like, you done eating? You want dessert? You want it to go back?
Yeah.
And she's like, what did I do? She's like, I was just joking.
Yeah, she is confused about that. And he's like, I'm a businessman, is really what he wants to just label it as. And she's supposed to be complicit with that, and not ask too many questions. But then he asks her to dance, and they kiss passionately when they dance. So the body heat is definitely always pulling them back together.
And they end up back in his apartment where they almost make love, but then somebody breaks into Sonny's apartment and takes him away, and Brenda's screaming like,
two thugs just break in the door. Sonny's just barely got her shirt off, and they're dragging him out, and she's sitting there screaming her head off, and they just leave her behind. Yeah, that was kind of interesting.
So who was the guy that he was brought to?
That was
helped out when he was shot.
Yes, it's Mr. Cusack is what she called him. And I do remember that, when around the time he was shot, she had some interactions with him too. And I think this is tying in with the Frank Smith stuff. And Frank, again, must have been trying to do something with Luke and Laura and had abducted Laura. And then Luke showed up, and they're assuming that Sonny tipped off Luke. And Sonny and Luke are friends. They're just really trying to keep that on the download from Frank Smith and the mob.
Yeah.
So they're grilling Sonny, and Sonny's not giving up hardly any information. And and doesn't, Stone show up at Sonny's apartment, and Brenda's still freaking out. And Stone goes to Luke, tells him what's going on. I think Luke goes barging in with Mr. Cusack's holding Sonny. They come to terms, and Sonny's like, oh, and Sonny comes back to his apartment, and Brenda's like really freaked out by what happened, and how Sonny's just kind of blown it off, not offering much for explanation. He's like, hey, it's fine, let's go back here on the couch.
Wasn't she home? Didn't she go home?
Okay, I'm reviewing my notes. Maybe I got that wrong. You're right.
Because she was
You're right. He did go back to his apartment, and he talked to Stone. Brenda wasn't there.
But he
called the quartermains. Jason answered the phone first, like, do you want to talk to him? And I think she said yes, but she was really cold. She said she's busy and she can't go to dinner because he's trying to get right back in the zone with her.
Yeah, he was like, well, tomorrow night, and then he's like, well, why don't you just come over now? And she's like, no, she's still so shaken up. She he could have.
You're right. Yeah, she blows him off. Yeah, and she also too says she's got a photo shoot to do for Deception. So now you got to see some crazy 90s photo shoot where Brenda's wearing, I don't know, an Ivy Leaf veil, and that's about
it. Right. Sonny interrupts the photo shoot, and she can't handle the thought of thinking that he could almost be killed.
Right.
And she hallucinates, seeing him all around, everywhere she looks, in the mirror, sitting in the director's chair.
Yep. All of a sudden, he's there in an intricate part of the photo shoot, directing her and stuff like that. She's having a hard time focusing, and she's yelling for the real photographer all the time to come back out and take the rest of the pictures they need to take, so she can get her head screwed back on straight.
Right.
So then he knows. He's got to up his game. And I'm just kind of reverting back to when they were having dinner one of these times, and he said, Diamond's our girl's best friend. And he sends her this expensive diamond bracelet. And this is kind of iconic because this is kind of thrown into conversation throughout the course of history with their relationship. This is really expensive. She's enamored by it. It's beautiful, but she's like, I can't keep this. What does this mean? You can't give me something this expensive. This can't be real.
She's like, I can't keep this. She's trying to stay mad, but she's like, she keeps smiling, and she's like, oh my God, this is mine.
Totally.
And Jason, I was laughing because Jason's like, you got to give it back to him. You can't be involved with him. And I'm like, well, yeah, in a few years, you're going to be like his best friend.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Jason definitely wanted her to give it back. He doesn't trust Sonny. Jason Quartermain doesn't trust Sonny. Let me be really clear about that.
Yes. I think she like wants to like see him in person to give it back, and he's like, no. He's like, you don't want to do that, and she's like, well, I don't want to be rude.
Yeah, she begrudgingly kind of says that she'll send it back, and then she calls him and she says that she can't keep it. And then she says, how about we meet at the PC Grill? Because he says he's going to meet there, and she'll give it to him personally.
Yeah.
Now, little does she know, when she shows up at the PC Grill, they're sitting there talking. She's got a fabulous looking red dress on, and Sonny's having a drink, and then some blonde named Cindy shows up, and it's Sonny's date, and sits down next to him, and Brenda is instantly ticked.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked it when she was like, what did you say your name was? Cindy?
Totally, yes.
And then I guess she pretends that she can't get the bracelet off.
Right, she's like, the class is stuck, and
Yeah.
he's like, sure it is.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, she's very hostile to Cindy. Cindy's like, I'm gonna go powder my nose. And Cindy's kind of a little dismissive. She's like, I expect you'll be gone when I return.
Right.
But I was like,
and Sonny's kind of ticked at Brenda's jealousy, because I think he's like, what'd you expect? You're dumping me wayside. I give you a beautiful bracelet to try and apologize. You're still blowing me off saying you want to return it. Okay, if this isn't going to happen, I'm stepping over the body and moving on, is basically what he's trying to tell her. But
yeah.
in his heart of hearts, he's hoping to make her jealous enough that the two will stay together.
She calls Lois to tell her about the bracelet.
Right.
And I think it's shortly after they discuss whether she should keep it or not. If she really wants to be with Sonny, she starts to have these dreams. And she imagines Sonny just being like a regular businessman, 9 to 5, like coming home, working out. And she's just like,
really doesn't have time for her.
Right.
Right. He doesn't have time to take her out. He doesn't have time to romance her in bed, because he's got such a rigid schedule, and he's got to focus. And he's just the man with a plan, and that's it. So that wasn't very attractive to her.
Yeah. And then she has like, I guess, an alternate fantasy where he's a mobster. He shows up, cigar in his mouth or cigarette. I thought it was so cheesy.
Right?
He like threw the cigarette, and I guess she like caught it with her mouth.
She got it. I think, the more I think about this now, because you've kind of mentioned this and I see it, they are having Brenda dream and fantasize a lot. And what they were probably doing is, this is a throwback to the early 80s, where Guiding Light did that with the character of Nola Reardon. And Nola had a lot of dreams and fantasies on there. And they were really talked about in Soap Opera Digest, and clips were reused and stuff like that too. So they were borrowing a little bit from that other show on how they were doing that. I wonder
if they had similar
teenager
people, like on the writing team, that worked on both shows.
I don't know. I really don't. I'm going to say, as far as head writer, no, because that was all Douglas Marland that did that on Guiding Light. And then Douglas Marland was huge on As the World Turns. And you've heard me talk about that before too. He invented the whole Snyder Clan. He invented Damien for Lily, all that type of stuff. So he was passed by the time that happened, and he wasn't at General Hospital. But there could have been other members of the writing team that were helping pitch that or something too. I'd have to look it up and do the research. But
cool.
But they were playing into those fantasies, and again, that was really powerful on soaps. And I mean, and it still kind of works. We don't see it much, but they were using those fantasies to really build up those two characters and pull the audience in and really root for them and kind of be mystified by them.
Yeah. So now we have Lois and Brenda going into business together to open a recording studio.
Yeah, so you're hearing about L&B Records for the first time, but Lois, I think, has been kind of pushing this and been doing this with Ned/Eddie Main's group, and she wants to open up their own business as a recording studio and be a record label. And so L&B, Lois and Brenda, obviously, they need money and capital to do it, and they're happen to be talking about this at Kelly's, and lo and behold, in comes Sonny and sits down at the table, and he's like, well, I'd be interested. And Brenda's like, what? You've got that type of capital? I had no idea. And he's like, put a proposal together with some numbers and we'll talk.
Mm-hmm. And he even made a joke like, I'll make sure it's like clean money. Like, taxes paid and everything.
Right. Right.
But a
So
little
then they end up,
tidbit,
yes.
while all this is happening, Ruby gets a phone call that BJ was in an accident. Was this when BJ's heart
Dun, dun,
happened?
dun.
Like that whole
This
surgery?
is big BJ, because you're right. So obviously I can time frame this now, knowing when this happened. This is the big May sweeps thing in 94. So May of 94 is the time period of what we're discussing and watching right now. And you're right. Aunt Ruby got a call about Bobby's kid, BJ, being in this accident, and she's running out the door to head over to General Hospital, and she asked Brenda to lock up Kelly's for her.
Wow. I always thought that was something that happened in like either the late 80s or like 1990. Like
No.
just the way they reference it all the time. I always think it was like the mid 90s.
I mean, in the mid 90s, they had story after story that was huge. And that BJ story, heart transplant to Maxie, was huge. You know, the Sonny and Brenda and Sonny Jackson Brenda storyline was huge. They were pop. And then, of course, the Stone Robin and the AIDS storyline. It was just huge writing and huge draws during that time in the 90s for GH.
So they draw up 3 different proposals. One's like a bare bones proposal, one's like a wish fulfillment proposal, and one's kind of like in between.
Right.
And initially Sonny says that since he's putting up all the capital, he wants 75% of the company. And Lois
and he doesn't
like,
want to go cheap either. He wants to be like, well, if you want this equipment and blah, 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 let's do it right. But you're right. He is like, I'm the biggest one at risk. So what's the split on this going to be?
Yeah. And Lois is not happy about that. She stands right up and is like, no deal. And she storms out. And Brenda's like, what do you mean? Like, what are you going to do? And she was like, he was supposed to follow us.
Right. Well, because didn't what he pitched first was like 75, 25.
Yeah.
She's like, Lois is like, nope, and just gets up with her acrylic nails and walks out the door. And Brenda follows her and they get in the hallway. And she's like, why'd you do that? And she's like, he was supposed to stop us. That didn't happen.
Yeah.
So then Brenda knocks on the door and right away Sonny opens it up and he's like, uh-huh. And she's like, I left my keys here. Can I look for them? And she's like going around and digging.
Well, she put them in her shirt before she knocked. She like put them in her shirt.
That's funny. Okay, good catch on that one. So then, and Sonny's kind of looking at Lois and he's like, oh, I'm just surprised you were so abrupt and you didn't try and counter. And she's like, oh, I didn't realize that was an option. So then they start working the numbers around a little bit. I think he goes like 70-30 and she's like, nope. And finally he says 60-40 to his favor. What'd she say? Like 45-55, and he was like, no.
Yeah, she said that was the lowest she was willing to go. And then
right.
He said
and then he came back to her and said 60-40, and they shook on it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think, does she leave, or maybe this is a different scene? Because
she does leave, and the minute that she's gone, Sonny starts kissing Brenda and making out with her, and again, like they've got the music going. I'm trying to remember the song that was playing. It was kind of funny. I'm sure they weren't paying royalties on that, but it was kind of funny because then all of a sudden there's a knock at the door, and it's a knock at the door. Yes, and it's like Commissioner Sean Donnelly, and I can't remember his sidekick that was there with him, and they're pounding, and finally Sonny opens up the door. And he's like, we need to take you downtown for questioning. Mm-hmm. So again, they get interrupted. And he takes Sonny in for questioning. He's like, it won't be long. Stay here. Listen to some music. Relax. She's freaked out. She's like, what is going on? So we didn't get to see the scenes of them questioning Sonny. But after a bit, Sonny comes back. And then, again, Brenda just loses them. And she says, she can't do this.
Yeah.
And she storms out.
Yeah. That's pretty much where it ended, right? That was the last of it.
Yes, that was our stopping point. So this in the Sonny and Brenda saga, we put a pause on it, and our storyline's probably like mid to late May of 1994, and they're hot and cold right now. They're cold again because Brenda's turned on the cold water on the faucet, and she just says, "Can't do this."
I do like the push and pull, but like the way that they react to each other, I'm like in real life, like if either one of them would me, I'd like, yeah, I'm done. I don't have to deal with this. It's like you're playing games, right? I don't want to play games, but I like watching.
And there's a lot of them. Yeah, there's a lot of it between those two because there's definitely chemistry there, but the forces in the universe are kind of always working against them. Let's just say timing isn't in their favor.
So I know that eventually there's like a big storyline where they go to Puerto Rico, because I remember there being like, it being in the credits at some point, like a boat explosion or
Yes,
something.
you're
Is that
correct.
in 1994, or is that like further
It
down the
is. I
line?
want to say that's going to be November sweeps of '94,
Oh,
so
that's
it's
November
coming up
sweeps.
later in this year. Yep.
Okay.
Because they went on location in November. We're dealing with May sweep stuff, and the BJ storyline was definitely the bigger ticket item. But in November, it's much more with Sonny and Brenda. Luke is involved. I think it's the whole Frank Smith stuff coming to a head is when that's
Oh,
going to
wow.
happen.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Huh. I'm excited.
Yeah. There's some good stuff.
Do you have anything else to say about anything that we watched?
Another thing that we saw during this, I'll just make mention of it, is Juan is working behind the bar at the Outback, and that is Ricky Martin, as you may or may not have guessed.
Yes,
And
we
he had
did
just
see
like
him.
freshly left Menudo, and they brought in Ricky Martin around the time they knew that Antonio Sabato Jr. was leaving GH. So Antonio Sabato Jr. was such a huge heartthrob for that show that they brought in Ricky Martin, hoping to capitalize a little bit on the Menudo fame. And this was before he, of course, released Livin' La Vida Loca. That didn't happen until after he left GH. But they brought him in to kind of have that wow and pizzazz factor. And they started with a slow bubble with him. And he is working as a bartender at the Outback. But then Lois is also wanting to see about signing him. And she talked about this with Sonny as one of her bands or groups or artists on their L&B label. So you're going to see with more that we watch that starts drawing a big focus, because I don't know the backstory with Juan, but Juan and Lily had a child together, and I think that child didn't survive, and Juan and Lily's relationship gets fractured because of it.
Lily, that Sonny ends up marrying Lily?
Correct.
Oh, I was just gonna
So
say.
let's not jump too far ahead. Let's not
Well,
jump too far ahead. But
I was gonna ask if he was in a popular pairing with anybody, and then you mentioned Lily. So
we're just gonna mention that Juan is on there, and then we'll see how much we discover in these clips that we're watching. So
okay,
and we will, because I'm not going to give too much away, because right around the time I first started watching, I could just spill and go into it, but I don't want to jump that far ahead. I'll reference it when we get to that.
I like kind of knowing the big things, like just from being in like the soap opera world, like
sure,
seeing the magazines, and then kind of like watching something that's kind of like, just focused on one thing, but you see little tidbits of that big thing. Like BJ's
now
heart,
we're getting to equate it together, and you're like getting to piece that timeline together a little bit, because you're right, there are significant things that you see and you're like, and that's why I wanted to talk about that bracelet, because they have a discussion about that bracelet several times in their relationship. I mean, she maybe references it to the point that she regrets ever taking that bracelet, because that was her letting him into her life. You know what I mean?
Oh wow. I remember when she came back in 2010, they had like old clips in like the promo, and he was like, "I love you, Brenda," and she's like, "I know." That's just, she was like, "I love you too." She's just like, "I know." I was like,
So it's kind of interesting. I haven't heard a lot of buzz, but GH is celebrating their 60th year this April 1st. And I mean, I've heard that Jane Elliott's coming back, but on their 50th, I mean, they got Vanessa Marcel back for like 4 weeks, and they did a really nice twist. It'd be interesting if they were keeping that on the download, because whenever she's gone, I swear soap mags, just to sell mags, just put that buzz out there in hopes. And it takes like 4 or 5 years of talking about it before then she starts to say like, oh yeah, I'd be interested in it. And it'd be interesting if they were keeping something really secret and quiet, and if Brenda would make an appearance in Port Charles again. I don't know.
I feel like at least once or twice a year. Now there's only one soap mag, but they would have her on the cover, and it's like "Back to GH?" Like,
sell that magazine. Sell that magazine. And that's all it takes, is throwing her on the cover, and it does it. So I get it.
But that would be nice if she came back for the anniversary.
Yeah.
75, the 75th seems a little too far away. So like she should come back while she can.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, because I guess we could say last we saw her, she just kind of got on a plane and was happy, and that was it.
Well, you're right. She was on there from 2010 to 2011, and then they brought her back for the 50th in 2013. And like I said, she stayed for about a month, and then Brenda left town again. So
threw a buttered roll at the back of Carly's head.
Yeah, exactly.
Let everybody think she's
and
with Michael.
Right? So you know about all this, so I'm not giving anything away, obviously.
No, I watched all that. That's actually when I was watching.
Okay, because she did come to town, and the first thing she did was show up on Sonny's doorstep to try and see, was there a way back to each other? But then it gets out, oh my God, Brenda at the time is engaged to Jack, because Jack showed up on Carly's doorstep knocking, saying, we got to finalize the divorce because I'm technically engaged to be with Brenda. And then Carly blew all that up, and Jack broke up with Brenda again. So then Brenda pretended to sleep with Michael just to tick Carly off.
I feel like I haven't seen it all, but I feel like I just know that that's always the go-to, that she just goes to Jack's. Like, can't be with Sonny.
Yeah, I mean, it's an easy fallback because of how long that push and pull and that triangle lasted. And I mean, it was a very popular triangle. I equate that up there as one of the popular triangles from the 90s, just like Holden, Lily, and Damien on As World Turns.
And I watched most, if not all, of her 2002 return. I'm surprised Jax would even want to be engaged to her after their failed wedding into her at the end of that run.
Right. Right. Well,
it's why do you keep going back and getting hurt like that?
Yeah.
She's gonna go back to Sonny.
Right.
But all right, well, if you don't have anything else to say about what we watched.
No, I think that was a good little wrap up. We'll have to plan for a block of episodes and walk down this path again here real soon.
Yes. Well, thank you for joining me. And as always, you can find us on all the socials at Queers and Soaps. And until next time, have a great night. Bye.
Bye, guys.